difference between gender and sex. The terms sex and gender are closely linked, yet they are not synonyms. In the 1960s has drawn the distinction between them. He suggested that the word sex be used to refer to the physical differences between men and women, while the term gender be used in connection to the behavior and cultural practices of men and women. Sex is refers to the biological characteristic or natural biological differences between men and women. For example, the differences in the organs related to the reproduction. A person's sex is biologically determined as men and women according to certain identifiable physical features which are fixed. Women marginalization has often been seen as natural and a fact of their bio. Gender is refers to the cultural, socially constructed differences between the two sexes. It refers to the way society encourages and teaches the two sexes to behave indifferent to socialization. Gender and the hierarchy, power relations between women and men based on this are socially constructed and not derived directly from biology. Gender identities and associated expectation of roles and responsibilities are therefore changeable between and within cultures. Definition between sex and gender with respect to some attributes. Definition of sex: biological or cosmological difference, while gender is social, not natural differences. Meaning of sex refers to the psychological characteristic, while gender is refers to social, cultural expectation and action. Aspect of change: difficult to change the sex when born as male or female, while the gender can be changed since gender identity is determined by society. Aspect of role by sex: throughout history and across culture, sex differences exist, while the gender, at different times in history and in different societies, gender roles are different. Aspect of policy: policies respond to sex differences in areas to do with the physical body, while gender policies can respond to gender stereotypes and traditional gender roles. The concept of gender sexuality and development. Gender is a culture-specific construct. There are significant differences in what women and men can or cannot do in one culture as compared to another, but what fairly consistent across cultures in that there is always a distinct differences between women's and men's rules, access to productive resources, and decision-making authority. Sexuality is distinct from gender yet intimately linked to it. It is the social construction of a biological drive. An individual's sexuality is defined by whom one has sex with, in what ways, why, under what circumstances, and with what outcomes. It is more than sexual behavior, it is a multidimensional and dynamic concept. There are four main gender narratives can be identified in the development discourse. The first one is Women and Development Approach, or WID approach. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, the WID approach became popular in the development field as a result of the concern that women were being left out of economic development processes. The approach focused on the inclusion of women in development as a tool to increase the economic and social efficiency of development processes. The second one is the GAD approach, or Gender and Development Approach. By the late 1980s, the GAD approach came to the forefront. This approach sought to challenge root causes of gender inequality and increases women's access to resources and decision-making. The GAD approach focused on empowerment or increasing the agency of women and giving them the power to take control of their own lives, often through targeted trainings and workshops. The third one is the post-structuralism and development. It is the theories critique a number of development practices and methodologies, particularly the power relation perpetuated by concepts such as development or development assistance and women in developing world. The last one is a human rights-based approach, an overarching development approach that has been applied to education is the HRBA. It is based on the belief that education is a universal, inalienable human rights that is independent with other basic human rights. This approach aims to ensure that all traditionally marginalized groups, including but not limited to girls and women, indigenous people, persons with disabilities, and linguistic and/or cultural minorities have access to education.
Social constructions of gender. The idea that gender difference is socially constructed as a view present in many philosophical and sociological theories about gender. There are some social constructions of gender. Gender-based harassment. Girls suspected to conform to stereotypical gendered appearances. As our voice, both male and female students regularly takes part in policing gender boundaries through bullying. Adolescent view of adulthood. Gender is a cultural construction which creates the environment where an adolescent performance in high school is related to their life goals and expectations. Depression. High school is a large transitional period of teenagers causing them to cope with these various transitions in different ways. Some negotiate the passages easily, whereas others develop serious behavioral and physiological problems. Body image. There are many different factors that affects body image, including sex, media, parental relationship, and property as well as weight and popularity. Education. Due to the amount of time that children spend in school, teachers are the influential role models for many aspects of children's educational experiences, including gender socialization. Transgender and intersex people. As long as a person presents this ecological is consistent with that person's gender identity. The gender role of a person is so much a matter of course in a society that people rarely even think of it, while the common assumption that overall in society there is a high degree of constantly among internal genitalia, gender identity, and gender role is accurate. Transsexualism also exists, where a person who is born as one sex and is brought up in the sex has a gender identity of the opposite sex and wishes to live as that gender. Intersex. People have a mismatch between their sexual genetic code and their physically makeup, which can result in a person have internal genitalia like a female and the body psyche like a male.